my name is Annie Tummino, and I'm head of special collections and archives. And I'm at Queens College, which is part of the City University of New York, or CUNY, system. And so we are in Flushing, Queens. Well, as everybody knows, by 2021, any archive that wants to have credibility needs to have a digital collections platform to make their collections available online to the public and to researchers. And when I started at Queens College, which is part of the City University of New York, in 2018, we did have some small-scale digital exhibits and digital collection sites that were created using open source software. But upon arrival, I was essentially told that IT was really no longer going to support them, that the server that those sites were on was going to have to be shut down. And I was having trouble finding support for this. We came across JSTOR Open Community Collections as a possibility. I think it was sort of launching right around this time. There was a very low barrier for entry. We already had a contract with JSTOR that allowed us to participate without paying additional fees. And from what I could gather, it seemed like a kind of quick and easy platform to be able to use and learn how to use effectively. And I said, okay, why not, instead of going through a years-long process, let's just try this out and see how it goes. And it's really worked out wonderfully for us. One area of our collections that we are very fond of, that we think are very historically significant as well, are our civil rights collections. Queens College was known for being a very active campus in the 1960s in regard to the civil rights movement. And many students at Queens College went to the South for projects like Mississippi Freedom Summer in 1964 to work on voter registration projects, to work in freedom schools, and to accomplish civil rights. And they also worked on that, I should say, not just in the South, but in the North, joining pickets at Woolworths, right here in Queens, and protesting the 1964 World's Fair. So they were concerned with racism in the North and the South, but they did work on some of these very major, well-known historical developments of the civil rights movement, such as Mississippi Freedom Summer. Andrew Goodman was a Queens College student that was one of the 3 of Goodman, Traney, and Schwerner who were actually murdered in Mississippi that summer. And so because of that, that's a really kind of watershed part of the history of the campus and its student population. And we have some really wonderful collections that were donated from alumni that participated in Mississippi Freedom Summer and other civil rights projects in the 1960s. And so that was an area that we knew we wanted to focus on right away because they are so historically important. And there's some really beautiful and unique photographs, as well as many documents in these collections. So we have a really great collection of civil rights photographs. It includes photos of civil rights activists like James Foreman, Stokely Carmichael, Martin Luther King, and others, James Farmer, Philip A. Randolph. And it also just has a lot of shots of sort of the everyday work of working in the movement, of everyday volunteers and everyday people who made change. So that's one of the collections that we're really proud of and that we're hoping to add more to. We also have a lot of institutional records. I mentioned the yearbooks before. I recently saw that our yearbooks are actually in the top 10 of most used collections on JSTOR Open Community Collections. So I'm not sure if that's just being driven by the Queens College community or a variety of researchers who are interested in looking at college life, but that was also really exciting to see. A third collection I could talk about is our COVID-19 collection. I mentioned that during the pandemic, we were trying to figure out how to work and how to continue to engage with the public during that time. And so we were working with the Queens Memory Project, which is a jointly sponsored initiative of the Queens Public Library and Queens College Library to document life in Queens. And we were collecting images, writings, and other materials about life during the pandemic. And we were able to harness the power of JSTOR Open Community Collections to share some of those materials online, which I think was a really relevant collection that spoke to the moment. It's hard to know who out there might be clicking on these items or these collections and how they're using them. So I'm sure there's a lot that we don't know about. But for our own part, we know that we use them a lot. When researchers contact us and they're interested in research questions about Queens College, I can immediately say, check the yearbook first, it's online. We also have all of our commencement records up online. So that's a second kind of wealth of data. And I actually was recently contacted. When we were talking before, I mentioned that some of these collections, you think, okay, well, folks at Queens College will be excited about this, some of our institutional records, but who knows if anyone else will really care about them. But I had an inquiry from someone from Brigham and Young University who was working on a joint project with Stanford, and they're actually analyzing demographic college data from the 1950s and looking at social mobility. And they've been looking for and asked specifically if Queens College had digitized materials that have lists of students that were at the college at a particular time, for example, such as commencement records. And I said, oh my gosh, great, we're literally just about to get all of our commencement records online. So I think that shows that you never really know how your collections are going to be utilized. Something that you think maybe is only going to be pertinent to a handful of folks locally turns out to have these bigger implications. So the COVID-19 collection, I mentioned that it felt very relevant and of the moment. And the fact that we were able to get that up quickly, I think really resulted in some pretty great publicity for us. First, we had a writer contact us who wanted to interview me about the collection and did a post on the JSTOR Daily, which is a really wonderful website. And they did an interview with me for Sunday NPR nationally, and asked me about the collection. And it was really great publicity for Queens College and for this collection to be more well known. And I think also to show some of the work that archives and archivists do that many aren't necessarily aware of, that we're not just working with very old materials, kind of that stereotype of all the stuff down in the basement or the attic, but we're also very actively documenting our communities. And then we also have really an interest from the history faculty and others on campus in a range of materials that document activism on and off campus, because that's been such a big part, I think, of what's been going on nationally the last couple of years is protests about climate change, about racial injustice, many other things. And so it's really nice to be able to put some of that current action into its historical context and look at connections and what's different and what's the same. And so we see that faculty are really interested specifically in that. And right now we have a very small collection, maybe it's like 50 items of flyers and ephemera and notices and things like that, mostly from the late 1960s that are up on our site. But we have a range of material that we can add to that to really make it a much broader and deeper sampling of materials. I would say that I just feel a lot more confident in the structure in which the materials are being shared because they are part of because they are part of JSTOR. They are part of a very familiar search environment and discovery environment that a lot of people are familiar with. And that's one of the selling points of JSTOR Open Community Collections that I really love, is that it's a platform that, I think a lot of students start using in high school, and then researchers all over the world continue to use it. It's pretty intuitive and well known. And I think that the legitimacy of having it be part of something that, millions of people are literally searching every year is something that I can say with confidence to our college administration, to grant funders and others, that these collections are a part of. And so for me, that's part of what makes it just kind of builds my confidence around the collections.